Lord forgive me for this trap shit. Sergeant Smack make it backflip. Telly Hank did with the action. With the vital speaking Spanish. Frank Matthews how I vanish. Poof. Came back like I'm King Tut. Gold BBS is on a beamer. When Fat Cat was 10 queens up. Ball off the profit, not the re-up. Fly like Puerto Rican Jesus. Uptown like I'm Baby May. Just caught a touchdown from the bay.
Cause I'll never quit, yo Big Lou.
Yo,
kick that gangster shit.
Well, I'm back at a theater near you, and I'm glad you could come to get the sneak preview. Cause yes, I'm the gangster on the mic on the stage. Yes, I'm the gangster who made front page. I'm Harlem, the original Gangsta Lou.
Stick-ups and crack deals, how gangsters do. You know, used to knock mob style, love Gangsta Lou. That was him that I used on the intro. Used to play the hood of the Pinto.
Good evening, North and South America. This is the news. We have a special bulletin just in from the police. Our streets are now a little safer. The police have captured the ringleader of mob style, AZ. At about 7:45 this evening, AZ, who is pretending to be a homeless person in Midtown, is now in police custody. He has been on the run for 7 years. That goes to show us how much we've been paying attention to the homeless. He was sentenced to death in the electric chair.
Oh man, homie. Yo man. Hey, yo man, back up off me, man. Probably got me locked down.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if you wanted to fight me, he has my number. I put bulletproof vests on a girl's back before. We know each other personally. When he was scared to go uptown and he couldn't go to Harlem because Gangsta Lou was chasing him through the city. You know, I held the girl there.
It's my fucking streets, man. All these dudes keep Harlem this, Harlem that. These dudes is not real Harlem, man. I am Harlem, man. I am Harlem, and any real nigga from Harlem know I'm Harlem.
This morning? I've been here since Tuesday. Not in this little place here. Yeah, it's hard as hell.
All the real gangsters, well. You ain't no fucking gangster, you can't be in this motherfucking joint, man. I am Harlem.
What's going on, gangster? You know, we out here, baby. Whole different day and age.
What people say was going on in the 70s and 80s is when gangster had this block with foreign cars, flooded with 100 people. Like, everything gangster did was big. Remember, gangster was wearing 3 Coogis at a time and shit. Gangster came out, yo, gangster was just, yo, he made this block feel like it was, oh man, incredible energy. Nobody can't say nothing about the gangster.
Hey, shit got Popalot. We back. Whole lot of mob shit going on. We on our way to Headshot City. Uptown. I would tell y'all to meet us in a specific address or a specific section, but this story gonna take us all across the borough. Y'all just meet us in the heart of Harlem, in front of the Apollo Theater. Alright, Harlem, we covering one of y'all own. And being that this story takes place circa the 1980s, it's gonna involve a lot of major players in the game at that time. Guys like AZ, Rich, Alpo, Clarence Preacher Heatley's Heatley crew, the YTC or the Yellow Top crew, the twins from Queens, Rich and Ron, who 50 would go on to immortalize in his ghetto classic, Ghetto Quran, where he rapped something like, rest in peace to Rich and Ron, money what they was about, yo. The twins was from Queens but got crazy cream with Alpo. And plus, he was a part of one of the first underground / hardcore rap groups to come from the East Coast, mob style, that included himself, AZ, Whip Wop, and Pretty Tony. Now, Gangsta Lou, who would self-admittedly go on to say how hard his life was, would say that he would start using drugs as early as 9 years old. And though that's very early for any age, we not talking about just weed either. So with something like that going on, you have to ask yourself what's going on in the household. And he was raised in a household with a single mother. I saw in an interview with Queen's Flip where he would say that his father, who was from Sierra Leone, Africa, was in the States studying to work computers. And after he would learn, he would leave. When asked if he ever met his father, he would say that he wouldn't even recognize him if he was standing in that same room. So with that being the case and Harlem being what it was at that time, it's easy to see how a young Lou would fall into some of those bad habits. And with his first name being Lewis, before Gangsta Lou, it was Boogaloo. And though the film Paid in Full would depict Alpo and Rich Porter as AZ's best friends, early on, even before them, I want to say, was Gangsta Lou, as he would become friends with AZ right after he would be fired from the cleaners, and he would be essentially the person that would introduce Alpo to AZ, a decision that he would go on to say that he regretted, because if not, he believes one of his close friends, Richard Porter, would still be alive today. As far as Alpo, he would say that they would meet while Alpo was almost making store errands for a family that was well off in the area. And he would see Lou coming around, and he would go on to ask Lou, how you getting this stuff and how you getting this money? As Lou would self-admittedly admit that he was always just a young fly nigga, saying that a lot of that would be supplied by his uncle, and he would soak up game from him as well. Not quite sure when his legal troubles would start, but Gangsta Lou would deal with a lot of them. And the only evidence that you need of this is him being featured on HBO's documentary of Rikers Island. He's one of the first people and one of the most memorable people that you see along the documentary. But along the course of those times behind the walls, he would build a lot of relationships with people in other boroughs, primarily Queens. And he would even go on to speak of a story of how he would end up essentially performing an escape from jail when a situation arose where he needed some medical treatment, and he would be transferred to a hospital in Queens, where he would end up fleeing to a nearby payphone, calling the well-known twins from Queens that I mentioned earlier, Rich and Ron, to pick him up, saying that he would essentially hide out for 3 years in their basement, living in Queens, building relationships with different people in the area. And with his close relationship to AZ, a lot of people would mention, well, why isn't he referenced in the Paid in Full movie? It's a lot of reasons, I guess, you can look at to that. One, he would say that he was always locked up, but after hearing his story, I determined that he is probably in it. He's just not mentioned by name. And the character that I think he would play was essentially Noriega, if you remember the Paid in Full movie, where he was just essentially a wild jail nigga. Didn't want people to know when he was out or when he came in. But he originally told AZ about Alpo in that movie, if you guys remember. And though he did have that relationship with AZ, though he probably got some of the work that he was hustling from AZ, he would stress that he really didn't work for AZ. It was just a very, very close friend. And it would be during those times with him hustling in the streets that would have him cross paths with another well-known crew from Harlem, YTC, or the Yellow Top crew, in a situation that Lou describes as him trying to back up his man that got into beef with some people, with those people being one of the alleged leaders of the YTC crew, another money-getting nigga by the name of T-Thone. A shootout would erupt between the two sides that would see Gangsta Lou getting shot in the chest. And him being the gangster that he is, he really described the situation as they essentially got at us before we could get at them. And though Paid in Full is far from 100% accurate, what is accurate is after AZ was shot, he would transition out of the game and try to get into the music business. And in a meeting that Gangsta Lou would explain that he had with him afterwards, he would say that AZ would go on to tell him that he's selling everything that he had as far as the cars, the jewelry, and he would advise Gangsta Lou to sell a chain that Gangsta Lou was wearing at that time, similar to the crown, huge crown chain that people remember the late, great K. Slay wearing. And Gangsta Lou would explain this as flooded with diamonds, and this was back in this time. It's the 1980s. So he said, not taking heed to AZ's word, on that same day that AZ would tell him that, he would go on to be abducted and taken to, I want to say he said 231st Street in Cortland in the Bronx by members of the Notorious Preacher crew. and they would end up taking his sneakers along with that chain that AZ said that he should sell. Now, I'm not sure if that had any impact on his decision or if he even got out the game at that time, but he would form the group that I spoke about earlier, MOBB Style, with AZ, Whip Wop, and Pretty Tony. And though they weren't pushed or publicized like some groups that we remember back at that time, like Eric B. and Rakim or EPMD, if you knew about them in the streets, and if you was probably in New York, you knew about them because they had things like Video Music Box, or they had the box where you would call up, request the song that you wanted to hear. And I remember seeing those videos heavily on those stations. Now, the one thing about Gangsta Lou is he has a very unique story, and I'm hoping that we see it on a full-length scale really soon, as he would describe it as paid in full on steroids. And one of the things that I think about that would make it very, very interesting is his name is just going to come up in a lot of significant times in Harlem history, even to find his name mentioned in feuds in the late 2000s with musical artists like Jim Jones coming out of Harlem. Not exactly quite sure what the beef was surrounding. Some people would say it would have to do with showing love to Harlem, as Gangsta Lou is all about. Some people reference it could be a blood gang rivalry. Some people would even say that it has something to do with the time where the Diplomats kind of was mentioned on America's Most Wanted back in 2008 with their association with a guy by the name of Carlos Zoo Thompson, who would end up being featured on America's Most Wanted due to his involvement with the murder of a 15-year-old by the name of Phoenix Garrett, where, according to the show, he would stumble upon a young Phoenix Garrett selling bootleg Diplomat CDs, and he would convince a 13-year-old by the name of Lamani De Lima to shoot and kill Phoenix Garrett. Now, Lou, being an advocate for Harlem and protecting the borough, it's easily to see how he could feel a certain way. Furthermore, who knows what his involvement with the Garrett family was possibly, as he's well known throughout the city. So with that being said, I definitely think Gangsta Lou is somebody y'all need to know about. If y'all want to know more, y'all can go ahead and follow him on Instagram, Gangsta Lou, GANGSTALOU 145. At the same time, y'all tap in with your guy, Popalot, on Twitter and Instagram, POP_A_LOT. Y'all hit the red subscribe right under this video so y'all know when this real trill spill shit is dropping. Y'all get in the comment box, y'all run it up. Let me know where we need to go to, what stories we missed, what we got wrong. Y'all know the situation. Till the next time, y'all niggas keep it solid. Mob gang.